If you want to control someone, stop trying to change their mind. Jung proved this is impossible. The mind is already programmed with automatic patterns formed in childhood. Those who understand these codes don't need to convince. They just need to trigger the right switch at the right time. Through decades of study, Jung discovered universal mental structures operating below consciousness. These structures determine how we react, what we fear, what we desire, and how we make decisions. They were programmed into all of us during our species' evolution through our DNA. These universal mental structures decide what you want, what you fear, and how you act. Emotion first, reason second. That's why politicians who trigger fear get more votes than those presenting detailed plans. Salespeople who activate desire sell more than those listing technical benefits. People who understand these psychological patterns can naturally guide behaviors. The mistake that destroys any influence attempt is trying to convince through reasoning when you should be working with instincts. There's a fundamental first mechanism governing this. Mental structures we all carry, programmed during thousands of years of evolution. When you learn to recognize and activate these structures, control becomes natural. In other words, when you master universal psychological triggers, you can direct reactions without the person realizing they're being influenced. The first fundamental mechanism is universal mental patterns. These are universal mental figures engraved in everyone's unconscious. Behavioral patterns developed over years that govern how we react in specific situations. The three most powerful patterns for influence are the hero, awakened when someone needs to overcome obstacles; the caregiver, emerging when someone needs protection; the rebel, activated when there's something to fight against. When you activate someone's hero pattern, they automatically take responsibility for solving problems. You don't need to ask for help directly. Just present a situation as a challenge requiring their specific skills. To awaken the hero, describe a clear obstacle, mention consequences of not acting, and position the person as the only one capable of making a difference. Their unconscious interprets this as a heroic call and responds with automatic determination. The caregiver pattern works differently. It's activated when you position yourself as vulnerable or present something needing protection. The person feels a natural impulse to care, protect, and guide. To activate the caregiver, reveal genuine vulnerability or show something valuable at risk. The person's unconscious interprets this as needing protection and responds with protective behavior. The rebel is awakened when you identify a common enemy or injustice needing to be fought. We all have a primitive tendency to unite against external threats. To activate the rebel, point out a system, person, or situation causing unfair harm. The person automatically positions themselves alongside you against this common enemy. Activating these mental patterns is powerful, which is why there's a subtle second mechanism governing how people see us that you need to learn first. The second mechanism Jung mapped was projection manipulation. We all project onto others what we can't see in ourselves, both qualities we deny having and flaws we won't admit. This projection happens automatically and determines how we see and treat each person. During decades of clinical work, Jung observed that his patients always saw in him exactly what they needed to see to feel safe or challenged. Some saw him as a protective father, others as stern authority, some as understanding ally. This didn't happen by chance. He was unconsciously positioning himself as the perfect screen for each patient's projections. This created automatic emotional connection that facilitated the entire therapeutic process. The human brain fills information gaps based on internal needs. When you first meet someone, your mind automatically projects onto that person characteristics you expect or need to find. Those who understand this can become exactly what the other person needs to see. You don't need to pretend to be someone else. You just need to highlight aspects of your personality that feed the other's positive projections. Here are some examples. For someone seeking authority, you emphasize knowledge and experience. For someone needing protection, you demonstrate strength and care. For someone valuing rebellion, you show independence and questioning. This works as documented by Jung because projections create instant emotional bonds. When someone projects onto you qualities they admire or needs they have, they automatically develop trust, respect, or emotional dependence. The secret is observing how someone talks about other people they admire or criticize. This reveals exactly what they project positively or negatively. You then position yourself to receive only positive projections. Jung also discovered you can direct specific projections through body language, tone of voice, and word choice. Small adjustments in your presentation make different people see in you exactly what they need to see. Now that you master pattern activation and projection manipulation, you need specific practical techniques to apply this in any situation. You need to understand 3 basic mechanisms Jung mapped. The first mechanism is working with personality's shadow side. We all hide parts of who we are because we consider these parts socially unacceptable. Jung observed that when someone allows you to express these repressed parts without judgment, you develop deep emotional connection with that person. For this to work practically, you don't criticize flaws the person reveals about themselves. Don't try to correct them or give moral advice. Simply accept these aspects as natural. The person comes to see you as the only one who truly understands them. The second mechanism is identifying and touching emotional complexes. We all have emotional wounds linked to past experiences. When certain words or situations activate these wounds, the person becomes temporarily vulnerable and seeks someone to offer relief or validation. To identify these complexes, observe which topics make the person react emotionally disproportionately. It could be insecurity about appearance, fear of abandonment, need for approval. When you subtly touch these points, the person automatically seeks your comfort or validation. The third mechanism is becoming the perfect screen for projections. Jung observed that we project onto others what we can't see in ourselves. When you position yourself so the person projects onto you qualities they admire or need, they develop automatic emotional bond. To do this, observe how the person talks about people they admire. If they value strength, demonstrate determination. If they admire intelligence, show knowledge. If they need protection, present yourself as reliable. Small adjustments in your presentation make different people see in you exactly what they need to see. Despite knowing all these mechanisms, you'll face resistance. That's why you must learn to map how people defend themselves psychologically. People who understand human mind mechanisms can naturally navigate resistance. Let's see what really happens when someone resists psychologically. The first form of resistance Jung observed is negative projection. When someone feels they might be influenced, they automatically project negative characteristics onto you. You can become manipulative, fake, or self-serving in their mind. This happens as psychological protection mechanism. This manifests when someone starts questioning your motives, interpreting your words negatively, or creating emotional distance. Jung realized that the more you try defending against these negative projections, the more you confirm in their mind that they're right. The second resistance is what Jung called personal ego inflation. Some people develop an inflated self-image as protection against external influence. They see themselves as too intelligent, too expert, or too independent to be affected by others. This resistance manifests through behaviors like automatic contradicting, showing superior knowledge, or minimizing any contribution you make. Jung observed that people with this protection are especially sensitive to anything that seems to question their competence. The third resistance is defensive complex formation. Jung discovered that when someone feels psychologically threatened, they can develop specific complexes regarding you. These complexes make the person react emotionally whenever you're present. Jung also identified that trying to break these resistances directly usually strengthens them. It's like trying to force a locked door instead of finding another entrance. What really works, according to Jung's observations, is working with resistances instead of against them. If someone projects negativity, you allow that projection without defending. If someone inflated their own ego, you validate that inflation instead of challenging it. If someone formed defensive complexes, you acknowledge and respect those complexes. Jung realized this approach works because it removes the psychological threat that created the resistance initially. When the person no longer feels threatened, defenses naturally reduce. The secret is understanding that psychological resistance always indicates some unmet need or unhealed wound. Instead of fighting resistance, you seek to understand what it's protecting. There's a fundamental difference between people who apply these ideas occasionally and those who've become naturally influential. The former still depend on conscious effort. The latter developed such deep understanding of human nature that influence happens automatically. Your current identity probably operates from need. You need to convince, need to explain, need to prove value. You live dependent on others' approval and spending energy to get what you want. The new identity operates from psychological understanding. You understand that people respond to predictable patterns. You no longer need to fight these patterns or pretend they don't exist. You simply work with them naturally. The milestone of this transition is when you stop seeing resistance as obstacle and start seeing it as information. Each person's reaction tells you something about their psychological state. You learn to read this information like a map of the human mind. 3 automatic changes happen. First, you naturally observe body language, tone of voice, and emotional reactions to understand what's happening in each person's mind. Second, you instinctively present yourself so people project onto you the qualities they value. Third, you stop taking others' behaviors personally and start seeing them as expression of complexes and psychological needs. What disappears is social anxiety, constant need for approval, and fear of rejection. These emotions lose power over you when you understand they're also just predictable psychological patterns. From now on, every interaction you have will be an opportunity to apply what you've learned. Observe how people react when you stop trying to convince them and start understanding what they really need psychologically. Practice identifying which mental pattern is active in the person before you. Is it the hero needing a challenge? The caregiver needing someone to protect? The rebel needing a common enemy? Observe which qualities the person projects onto you and adjust your presentation to receive these positive projections. Allow them to express their shadow side without judgment. Identify the emotional complexes that make them vulnerable. Knowledge only has value when applied. You now know how the human mind really works. The difference between you and most people is that you understand the mechanisms behind human behavior. Use this intelligently. People who master these discoveries don't need to shout to be heard, don't need to beg to be respected, don't need to struggle to exert influence. You're no longer the same person who started watching this video. Now you've seen how Jung decoded the human mind's codes. Click on the video on screen. You'll discover even deeper secrets about psychological power that few know. Click now on the video on screen.